The woman at Lane 7 had been there for 3 hours, and nobody had said a word to her. At Coronado Naval Base's range, that was unusual. SEALs were not known for silence around civilians, especially not around women who looked like they had wandered in from a coffee shop in La Jolla. But something about the way she moved, the way she loaded, the way she breathed between shots had created a bubble of quiet around her that even the loudest operators respected. What none of them knew was that the rifle in her hands had last been fired in a place that did not exist on any map, by a woman who was not supposed to exist at all. Riley Kincaid adjusted her ear protection and chambered another round with movements so economical they barely registered as motion. The target downrange sat at 400 meters, a distance most recreational shooters never attempted. She exhaled half a breath, let her heartbeat settle into the space between seconds, and pressed the trigger with the same pressure she might use to touch a sleeping child's forehead. The round punched through the tin ring with surgical precision. Behind her, a young Marine corporal stopped mid-step on his way to his own lane. His eyes tracked from the target monitor back to the small woman in jeans and a faded gray hoodie. He said nothing, but his trajectory changed. Instead of continuing to lane 12, he drifted closer to lane 7, drawn by something he could not quite name. Riley felt his attention like heat on her skin, but gave no indication she noticed. She had learned long ago that acknowledgement invited conversation, and conversation invited questions she could not answer. So she simply reached for another magazine, her hands moving with the unconscious grace of someone who had performed this action 10,000 times in circumstances far more dire than a sunny California afternoon. The Marine cleared his throat. "Excuse me, ma'am." Riley looked up, her face carefully neutral. The kid could not have been more than 22, all squared shoulders and fresh motivation. His rifle hung across his chest at a slightly awkward angle, the mark of someone still getting used to carrying a weapon as an extension of themselves. "Yes," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "I don't mean to bother you, but my rifle's been pulling left all morning. The armorer checked it twice, said it was fine, but I know what I'm seeing." The Marine's frustration bled through his carefully maintained military bearing. "My qualification is in 2 days, and I cannot figure out what I'm doing wrong." Riley studied him for a moment. She saw the slight tension in his left shoulder, the way his grip strangled the weapon just a fraction too tight. She saw 100 other Marines, just like him from another life, another version of herself who had been allowed to help. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to his rifle. The Marine's eyebrows climbed toward his cover. "You shoot?" "Something like that," Riley said, accepting the weapon he handed over with visible hesitation. She settled the rifle against her shoulder, immediately feeling the imbalance he had created with his grip. Her hands adjusted the position by millimeters, showing him without words where the tension lived. Then she raised the weapon, her body falling into a stance that was textbook perfect but somehow uniquely her own. "You're fighting the rifle," she said softly. "It wants to settle here." She shifted the stock slightly against her shoulder. "You're forcing it here. Let it rest where it wants to rest." The Marine watched with the intensity of someone glimpsing something beyond his current understanding. "Like, don't muscle it?" "Exactly. The rifle knows where it wants to be. Your job is to let it get there, then become still enough that you and the weapon are the same thing." She handed it back to him, her movements careful. "Try it." The kid took his rifle back like it was made of something precious. He moved to his lane, adjusted his stance the way she had shown him, and sent a round downrange. The shot hit dead center. "Holy hell," the Marine breathed. He turned back to Riley with something like reverence in his eyes. "Ma'am, how did you see that? I have had 3 different instructors try to fix my pull, and you just looked at me for like 10 seconds and knew exactly what it was." Riley felt the old instinct rise in her chest, the desire to teach, to share what she knew with someone hungry to learn. But that path led to questions about where she had learned, who had trained her, why her knowledge carried the weight of hard-earned experience rather than casual hobby. So instead she just smiled, a small thing that did not quite reach her eyes. "Spent some time around rifles," she said. "Good luck on your qualification." The Marine looked like he wanted to ask more, but something in Riley's posture had shifted, a door quietly closing. He nodded, his gratitude obvious even in his retreat. "Thank you, ma'am." "Seriously." Riley watched him return to his lane, already shooting better, his confidence rebuilt by a 60-second intervention. She felt the familiar ache of satisfaction mixed with loss. There had been a time when teaching young warriors was her purpose, when she had been trusted with the most dangerous students America could produce. Now she hid in plain sight, helping when she could, vanishing before anyone looked too closely. She turned back to her own lane, reaching for her rifle. The familiar weight settled into her hands like coming home to a place that no longer existed. She was lining up her next shot when she felt the shift in atmosphere behind her. The conversation among the SEALs at the far end of the range had stopped. Riley did not need to turn around to know they were watching. The young Marine's reaction had been too visible, his gratitude too obvious. In a community of warriors who prided themselves on expertise, someone casually fixing what 3 instructors could not would draw attention like blood and water. She forced herself to remain calm, to not alter her routine. Changing behavior now would only confirm whatever suspicions were forming. So she simply continued her pattern: load, breathe, aim, fire. Each shot a perfect echo of the last. Each impact exactly where she intended. 400 meters, 450, 500. The groupings never wavered. Before we continue, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you have witnessed quiet competence overlooked in your area. At the far end of the range, Chief Petty Officer Brad Torrance lowered his binoculars and turned to his teammate. "You seeing what I am seeing?" His swim buddy, a senior chief named Diaz, nodded slowly. "That is not recreational shooting." "No," Torrance agreed. "That is something else entirely." He studied the woman at lane 7 with the intensity he usually reserved for threat assessment. Small frame, maybe 5'4", civilian clothes that hung loose enough to hide her build. Nothing about her screamed operator, but nothing about her screamed civilian either. She existed in some undefined space between, and that bothered him more than he wanted to admit. "Who brings a custom rifle to a Navy range for fun?" Diaz muttered. Torrance's jaw tightened. "Someone who does not belong here." He started walking toward lane 7, his stride carrying the authority of someone who had spent 15 years earning the trident on his chest. SEALs did not tolerate pretenders, and they especially did not tolerate civilians treating their range like a public shooting gallery. If this woman wanted to play operator, she was about to learn what actual operators thought of the performance. Riley sensed him before she heard him. The quality of attention had changed from passive observation to active approach. She kept her eyes on her target, refusing to acknowledge the shift, but her heart rate climbed despite her training. This was the moment she had been trying to avoid for 3 months since she had started coming to Coronado. The footsteps stopped 2 meters behind her, close enough to assert authority, far enough to maintain tactical courtesy. Whoever this was knew how to approach someone holding a weapon. Riley fired her last round, the shot as perfect as all the others, then carefully cleared her rifle and set it down. Only then did she turn around. The man standing behind her wore desert camouflage utilities and an expression that could have been carved from granite. His arms were crossed over a chest that spoke of thousands of hours in the weight room. The gold trident insignia above his left pocket caught the afternoon light. Chief Petty Officer, Riley noted from his collar device. Senior enough to carry weight, junior enough to still carry attitude. "Can I help you?" "Chief," Riley said, keeping her voice level. "Chief Petty Officer Brad Torrance," he said, not offering his hand. "I'm a senior range instructor here. You have been shooting on this facility for what, 3 months now?" "About that," Riley confirmed. "I have a valid access authorization through the Public Access Program. Everything is properly registered." Torrance's eyes narrowed slightly. "I am not questioning your paperwork, ma'am. I am questioning your skill level. That was some impressive shooting just now." "Thank you," Riley said, recognizing the statement for what it was. Not a compliment, a challenge. "Where did you train?" Torrance asked. "That is not self-taught shooting. That is not even hobby shooter level. You're putting rounds through the same hole at 500 meters with a consistency that most of my guys cannot match. Riley had prepared for this question, had rehearsed her answer until it sounded natural. I grew up around firearms, had some good instruction over the years. I enjoy the challenge of long-range work. Good instruction, Torrance repeated, his tone making the words sound insufficient. Ma'am, I've been doing this for 15 years. I know what good instruction looks like. What you just demonstrated is not good instruction. That is elite-level capability. I appreciate the compliment, Chief, but I think you might be overstating things. Riley kept her expression friendly, but distant. I just practice a lot. Torrance opened his mouth to respond when a sound cut through the air that made Riley's entire body lock up. The rhythmic thump of helicopter rotors approaching from the north. Black Hawk, her mind registered automatically. 2 of them, flying in formation. The world tilted sideways for half a second. Suddenly, Riley was not standing on a sunny California range, but crouched in darkness. The same helicopter sound overhead, the smell of cordite and blood thick in her throat. Her hands wanted to shake. She forced them still through sheer willpower, but not before Torrance's eyes tracked to the movement. "You good, ma'am?" he asked, and something in his voice had shifted. The aggressive interrogation had been replaced by something that sounded almost like concern. "Fine," Riley managed, hating how tight her voice sounded. "Just not a fan of helicopters." The Blackhawks passed overhead, their sound fading toward the Pacific. Riley's breathing slowly returned to normal, but she knew the damage was done. Torrance had seen the reaction, had cataloged it with the same attention to detail he probably used on combat patrols. "Interesting," Torrance said quietly. "Most civilians I know do not have trauma responses to standard helicopter traffic." Riley met his eyes directly. "I did not say I was traumatized, Chief. I said I was not a fan." "There is a difference." "Is there?" Torrance asked. "Because from where I'm standing, you just had a physiological stress response that looked an awful lot like what I see in guys coming back from deployment." The conversation had gone somewhere Riley could not afford to let it go. She turned back to her rifle, beginning the process of breaking it down for cleaning. "I think we're done here, Chief. I appreciate your concern, but I am fine. Just here to shoot, same as everyone else." Torrance did not move. "You know what I think, ma'am? I think you're not just here to shoot. I think you have a background you're not talking about. And I think whatever that background is, it does not belong on a SEAL training facility range." Riley's hands paused fractionally in their work. When she looked up at Torrance, her expression had gone completely neutral, the kind of neutral that was itself a tell for anyone trained to read people. "Chief Torrance, I have been nothing but respectful of this facility and its rules. I have the proper authorization to be here. If you have a problem with that authorization, you are welcome to take it up with the public access coordinator. But unless you have an actual regulation I am violating, I would appreciate being allowed to finish my range time in peace." For a long moment, Torrance stared at her, clearly weighing his options. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Fair enough, ma'am. But let me be clear. This range is where we train the most elite warriors in the United States military. We do not take kindly to people playing dress-up and pretending to be something they are not. If you're just here for the Instagram photos and the thrill of shooting where SEALs shoot, maybe find another facility." Riley felt anger spike hot in her chest, but she kept it off her face. "I'm not here for photos, Chief. I am here because this is a well-maintained range with excellent safety protocols and reasonable access fees. Same reason anyone else would be here." "Right," Torrance said, not sounding convinced at all. "Well, enjoy your shooting, ma'am. I'm sure we will be seeing more of each other." He walked away, his posture radiating skepticism and territorial authority. Riley watched him go, then returned to her rifle maintenance with hands that wanted to shake, but did not. She had been careful. She had been so careful, but apparently not careful enough. Across the range, Senior Chief Diaz rejoined Torrance. "Well?" Torrance shook his head. "Something is not right about her. The shooting is too good. The rifle is too expensive. And she just about came apart when those hellos flew over." "PTSD," Diaz suggested. "That is what I thought," Torrance agreed. "But civilians do not usually develop helicopter-specific combat trauma. That is a very particular kind of stress response. So what are you thinking? I am thinking, Torrance said slowly, that maybe our mysterious civilian has some military background she is not advertising. Maybe contractor work overseas. Maybe something else. But nobody shoots like that without serious professional training. You want me to run her name? Torrance considered it, then shook his head. Not yet. Let me watch her a bit more first. If she is retired military or former contract, she has every right to be here. But if she is lying about her background, trying to get close to SEAL operations for some reason, that is a different problem entirely. They both looked back at Lane 7, where Riley had finished cleaning her rifle and was packing it into its case with the same precise movements she used for everything else. She never looked in their direction, but somehow both men had the distinct impression she knew exactly where they were and what they were discussing. That woman has situational awareness like I have never seen in a civilian, Diaz muttered. Yeah, Torrance agreed. That is because I do not think she is one. Riley returned to the range 4 days later, hoping enough time had passed for Torrance's suspicions to cool. She arrived early, before the morning training blocks began, when the facility was quieter and the likelihood of confrontation lower. The fog still hung thick over Coronado, turning the world soft and gray. She had just finished setting up at Lane 7 when she heard voices approaching. Multiple voices. Her stomach sank even before she turned around. Torrance stood at the entrance to the covered firing line, flanked by 6 other SEALs in various stages of their morning workout gear. All of them were watching her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to barely concealed amusement. This was not a coincidence. This was orchestrated. "Morning, ma'am," Torrance called out, his voice carrying the false friendliness of someone about to make a point. "Glad to see you back. The guys and artists talking about you." Riley straightened from her rifle case, keeping her face neutral. "Is that right?" "Oh yeah," Torrance continued, walking closer. "See, I was telling them about the shooting I saw you do last week. Really impressive stuff. World class, even. And you know what they said?" Riley waited, knowing whatever came next was designed to put her on the defensive. "They said I must be exaggerating," Torrance said, spreading his hands. "Because nobody shoots that well without serious professional training, and you told me yourself you were just a hobbyist who practices a lot. So now I got a credibility problem." One of the SEALs behind him, a muscular lieutenant with a cocky grin, chimed in. "The chief here has been known to oversell things. Remember that bar in Thailand? He said had the best pad thai in Southeast Asia? Gave me food poisoning for 3 days." The other operators laughed, but their eyes never left Riley. This was theater, and she was the unwilling star. "So here's what I was thinking," Torrance said, his tone shifting to something harder. "How about a friendly demonstration? You show the guys what you can do, prove I was not exaggerating, and we can all go about our morning. Sound fair?" Riley felt the trap closing around her. If she refused, she looked like a fraud, confirming Torrance's suspicion that she had been overstating her abilities. If she accepted and performed poorly, the same result. But if she accepted and shot the way she actually could, she would only deepen the mystery around her background, invite more questions she could not answer. The smart play was to refuse. Pack up her gear, leave with dignity, find another range somewhere else in San Diego County. But as she looked at Torrance's smug expression, at the way he had brought an audience specifically to humiliate her, something hard and stubborn rose in her chest. She had spent 3 years hiding, 3 years diminishing herself, pretending to be less than she was, swallowing the knowledge that she had served her country in ways these men would never know. And she was tired, bone tired of being dismissed, of being underestimated, of pretending that the skills she had earned through blood and sacrifice were somehow shameful secrets. "What did you have in mind?" Riley asked quietly. Torrance's smile widened. "Nothing crazy. Standard SEAL sniper qualification course. 600 meters, 10 rounds, time limit of 2 minutes. You game?" Riley did a quick calculation. Standard SEAL qual required hitting a man-sized target at 600 meters with at least 7 of 10 rounds. For qualified SEAL snipers, it was challenging but achievable. For a supposed civilian hobbyist, it should be nearly impossible. Torrance was betting she would fail, publicly and definitively. "What happens if I pass?" Riley asked. Torrance laughed, a sound without humor. If you pass, I will personally apologize for doubting you and never question your presence on this range again. He paused. But when you fail, you agree to stop coming here. Find a different facility for your hobby shooting. Riley should have walked away. Every instinct trained into her over a decade of classified operations screamed that this was bad tactics, that exposing her capabilities served no strategic purpose. But another part of her, the part that had been forced to disappear, that had been erased from official records and denied recognition for her service, wanted desperately to be seen. Deal, Riley said. The SEALs stirred with interest. Apparently, they had expected her to back down. Torrance's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise before settling back into confidence. Lane 12, he said. Standard SEAL target configuration. Diaz, get the timer ready. Riley picked up her rifle and walked to lane 12, aware of 7 sets of eyes tracking her every movement. The fog was starting to burn off, revealing the target array downrange. At 600 meters, the silhouette targets looked impossibly small, barely visible in the morning light. She settled into position, feeling her body shift into the familiar geometry of precision shooting. Her breathing slowed automatically. Her heart rate dropped. The world narrowed to the space between her position and the target, everything else fading into irrelevance. This was the state she had lived in for years, the place where she was most herself, most alive. It felt like coming home after a long exile. 2 minutes on my mark, Diaz called out. 3, 2, 1, mark. Riley's first shot broke before the word mark had fully left his mouth. The target monitor showed an immediate center mass hit. She cycled the bolt, acquired, fired. Another hit. The rhythm took over, her body moving through the sequence with the automaticity of perfect training. 10 rounds in 47 seconds. 10 center mass hits. The silence behind her was profound. Riley engaged the safety, cleared her weapon, and stood up. Only then did she turn to face the SEALs. Torrance stared at the target monitor like it had personally offended him. His jaw worked soundlessly for a moment before he managed to speak. That is not possible. The cocky lieutenant was no longer smiling. Chief, that was faster than your qualification time. It was faster than anyone's qualification time, another SEAL muttered. I have never seen anyone shoot a qual course that fast and not miss. Riley shouldered her rifle, meeting Torrance's eyes directly. I believe you said something about an apology, Chief. Torrance's face had gone red. He took a step toward Riley, his hands clenched at his sides. Who the hell are you really? And do not give me that hobbyist bullshit again. Nobody, and I mean nobody, shoots like that without professional military training. Advanced professional military training. I'm someone who knows how to shoot, Riley said calmly. That is all you need to know. That is not all I need to know, Torrance shot back. This is a secure military facility. You want to keep shooting here, you need to explain where you learned to shoot like a Tier 1 operator. Riley felt her control starting to slip. I do not owe you an explanation, Chief. I have proper authorization to use this facility. I've demonstrated the skill you challenged me to demonstrate. Our deal was that if I passed, you would leave me alone. So leave me alone. The other SEALs were watching the exchange like spectators at a tennis match. The lieutenant stepped forward, his expression more curious than hostile. Ma'am, I think what the chief is trying to say in his tactful way is that we have all been doing this for a very long time. We know what elite shooting looks like. And what you just did was not just elite. That was something else entirely. Riley's hands tightened on her rifle. I appreciate the compliment, but I really just want to finish my range time. Torrance's eyes narrowed. You are hiding something. I do not know what, but I'm going to find out. And when I do, if you're lying about who you are or why you're really here, there will be consequences. Riley left the range that morning knowing she had made a critical mistake. The smart operator never revealed more capability than absolutely necessary. She had just violated that principle spectacularly, and now she would pay the price in unwanted attention and inevitable investigation. She drove back to her small apartment in National City, her mind already running through contingency plans. Maybe it was time to move on. San Diego had been comfortable, But comfort was a luxury she could not really afford. She could be in Arizona by tomorrow, Oregon by the weekend. Start over somewhere new, somewhere without curious eels asking questions she could never answer. But even as she thought it, she knew she would not run. Not this time. She was tired of running. Her phone buzzed as she pulled into her parking spot. Unknown number. She almost did not answer, but something made her thumb the accept button. Riley Kincaid, she said. The voice on the other end was professional, measured, and immediately identifiable as military. Ms. Kincaid, this is Commander James Harding, SEAL Team 7. I was hoping you might have some time to talk this afternoon. Riley's pulse quickened. A commander. Torrance had escalated quickly. About what, sir? About your rather impressive demonstration at the range this morning. Word travels fast in the teams, Ms. Kincaid, especially when a civilian outshoots a SEAL qualification course by margins that frankly should not be possible. With respect, Commander, I do not think I did anything wrong. I have proper authorization to use the facility, and I followed all range safety protocols. You misunderstand, Ms. Kincaid. You're not in trouble. I'm just curious. And when I get curious, I tend to make phone calls. Harding paused. I made several this morning. To some contacts of mine at SOCOM, at JSOC, even reached out to a friend at CAG. Riley's blood went cold. Combat Applications Group, Delta Force, the unit that technically did not exist and that she had technically never been part of. I'm not sure what you are implying, Commander, Riley said carefully. I'm not implying anything, Ms. Kincaid. I'm stating facts. The facts are that I have been in special operations for 23 years, and I have never seen shooting like what you demonstrated today. The other fact is that when I started asking very quiet questions through very discreet channels about female operators with your particular skill set, I got some very interesting non-answers. Riley said nothing. There was nothing to say that would not make things worse. The kind of non-answers that tell me I am asking about something classified above my pay grade. Harding continued. The kind of non-answers that come with polite suggestions to stop asking questions. So here's what I know, Ms. Kincaid. I know you're not just some civilian hobbyist. I know you have training that even most of my guys do not have. And I know that whatever you did, whoever you did it for, is buried deep enough that even a SEAL team commander cannot get confirmation. What do you want, Commander? Riley asked quietly. I want to understand who is shooting on my facility. Not because I want to expose you or cause you problems, but because I need to know. If you were one of ours, if you served in the shadows doing the things most people will never know about, then you deserve respect, not harassment. But I need to know the truth. Riley closed her eyes, leaning her head back against the car seat. She had kept this secret for 3 years, had built a new life on the foundation of anonymity and denial. But Harding was right. The non-answers he had received were as good as confirmation. Someone at JSOC had recognized her name, had seen the flags in her file, and had quietly shut down his inquiry, which meant they knew exactly who she was and what she had done. I cannot tell you what you want to know, Riley said finally. I legally cannot tell you, but I will say this. I am not a threat to anyone at Coronado. I am just someone trying to live a quiet life after doing a job that does not officially exist. That is good enough for me, Harding said. There was something like respect in his voice now. I will make sure Chief Torrance backs off. He is a good SEAL, but he can be territorial. He does not need to know your background to leave you in peace. Thank you, sir, Riley said, surprised by the relief flooding through her. Ms. Kincaid, one more thing. If you ever want to talk, operator to operator, my door is open. I imagine it gets lonely carrying those memories alone. The unexpected kindness hit Riley harder than any interrogation could have. Her throat tightened. I appreciate that, Commander. She ended the call and sat in her car for a long moment, processing what had just happened. Harding had figured out, or at least figured out enough. And instead of pushing for answers he knew she could not give, he had offered solidarity, understanding, the recognition that she was one of them, even if the official record would never reflect it. Meanwhile, back at Coronado, Commander Harding walked in the team room where Torrance was debriefing his swim buddy about the morning's events. The chief looked up, his expression still clouded with frustration. Sir, Torrance started, but Harding held up a hand. Chief, I need you to drop your investigation into Ms. Kincaid. Torrance blinked. Sir, with respect, she is clearly hiding something. That shooting was not civilian level. It was not even regular military level. That was Tier 1 capability. I know, Harding said calmly, and I'm telling you to let it go. Commander, if she has some kind of military background she is not disclosing, that could be a security issue. It is not a security issue, Chief. Trust me on this. Harding's voice carried the weight of command. Ms. Kincaid has every right to use that range. She has proper authorization, and she follows all protocols. Her background is her own business. Torrance's jaw tightened. So we're just going to ignore the fact that we have someone with what looks like special operations training shooting on our facility, and we do not know anything about her. What I know is sufficient, Harding said. What you need to know is that she is not a threat, and you're going to leave her alone. That is an order, not a suggestion. Torrance looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew better than to push back against a direct order from his commander. Yes, sir. After Harding left, Diaz leaned over to Torrance. What do you think that was about? I think, Torrance said slowly, that our commander just confirmed everything I suspected. She is not civilian. She is not regular military. She's something else. Something classified enough that even he could not get details. So what are you going to do? Torrance stared at the wall for a long moment. Follow orders and leave her alone. But that does not mean I'm going to stop watching. Because whoever Riley Kincaid really is, whatever she did before she showed up at Coronado, I want to know. Need to know. Diaz shook his head. You're going to get yourself in trouble, brother. Maybe Torrance agreed. But something about this whole situation does not sit right with me. Women do not just develop Tier 1 shooting skills out of nowhere. There's a story here, and stories like that usually matter. What neither of them knew was that the story was bigger than they imagined, and that it was about to intersect with Torrance's own history in ways that would change everything he thought he understood about sacrifice and service. 2 weeks passed in uneasy peace. Riley returned to the range 3 times, and each time Torrance was there, watching from a distance but making no move to approach. The scrutiny was unnerving, but at least it was silent. She could live with silent. On her 4th visit, she arrived to find a range busier than usual. A qualification cycle was running, with SEALs rotating through various shooting drills. Riley almost turned around and left, but she had driven 40 minutes through San Diego traffic and was not ready to surrender her morning. She signed in, verified her lane assignment, and set up at her usual position. She was halfway through her first magazine when she felt a presence beside her. Not Torrance this time. Someone younger, less aggressive in their approach. "Excuse me, ma'am." Riley looked over to find a young Marine corporal she had helped weeks earlier. His face brightened with recognition. "I thought that was you," he said. "I've been hoping to run into you again. I want to thank you properly. I qualified expert last week. First time ever. Will you show me about letting the rifle settle? It completely changed my shooting." Riley felt warmth spread through her chest. "That is excellent. I'm glad it helped." "Helped? Ma'am, you saved my career. I was about to wash out of scout sniper screening because I could not get my fundamentals right." The corporal's enthusiasm was infectious. "My instructor asked what changed, and when I told him about you, he wanted to know who you trained with." Riley's smile faded slightly. "What did you tell him?" "I did not know. That you just helped me out on the range one day." The Marine paused. "But ma'am, he said the way you diagnosed my problem, that is not something a hobbyist would catch. He said whoever trained you knew what they were doing." Before Riley could respond, a voice cut across the range. "Carter, you are up in 2 minutes. Stop socializing and get your gear staged." The Marine straightened. "Yes, Gunnery Sergeant." He looked back at Riley. "I should go. But thank you again, ma'am." "Really?" Riley watched him jog back to his unit, feeling the familiar mix of pride and loss. There had been a time when teaching young warriors was her entire purpose, when she had been trusted with the deadliest students America produced, shaping them into something extraordinary. Now she existed in the margins, helping when she could, but never able to claim the knowledge that defined her. She turned back to her rifle and froze. Torrance stood at the entrance to her lane, and his expression was different than before. Not aggressive. Not suspicious. Something else entirely. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "I thought your commander ordered you to leave me alone," Riley replied, not lowering her guard. "He did. This is not about that." Torrance glanced around, ensuring no one was within earshot. "This is personal." Riley studied him carefully. The hostility that had radiated from him during their previous encounters was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like vulnerability. "What is this about, Chief?" "My brother," Torrance said. "Staff Sergeant Kyle Torrance. Army. He was killed 4 years ago in an operation that officially never happened. Middle East somewhere, though the exact location is still classified. All I know is that he was working with some kind of special task force, doing something important enough that when he died, I could not even be told the details." Riley's blood went cold. She knew where this was going before he said another word. "I have spent 4 years trying to find out what really happened to him," Torrance continued, "trying to understand what he died for. And every time I ask questions, I get the same response you probably get when people ask about your background. Polite silence and suggestions to stop digging. I am sorry about your brother," Riley said carefully, "but I do not see what this has to do with me." Torrance pulled out his phone, thumbed through to a photo, and held it up for Riley to see. It was a military portrait, a young soldier with Torrance's eyes but a softer face, wearing Army combat fatigues and a genuine smile. "Kyle was a damn good soldier," Torrance said. "Best in his unit. But about 6 months before he died, something changed. He came home on leave, and he was different. Excited about something, but could not talk about it. Said he had been selected for a special training program. Something unprecedented." Riley forced herself to keep her expression neutral, but her heart was hammering. She remembered that training cycle. Remembered the Army sending their best scouts to cross-train with a program that did not officially exist. "He mentioned something once," Torrance said, his voice dropping even lower. "After a few beers, when his guard was down. Said he was training with the most lethal shooters he had ever seen. Said they were rewriting the book on precision marksmanship. And then he said something I did not understand at the time." "What did he say?" Riley asked, though she already knew. "He said his instructors were ghosts. People who did not exist on paper, but were more skilled than anyone with official record." Torrance's eyes bored into Riley. "He said one of them, the lead sniper instructor, was someone nobody would ever suspect. Someone who could walk through any environment completely invisible." Riley's hands had gone numb. She set down her rifle very carefully, buying time to think. "Chief, I understand you want answers about your brother, but I cannot help you." "Cannot or will not," Torrance challenged, but there was no anger in it now. Just desperate need to understand. "Cannot," Riley said firmly. "Even if I knew anything about the operation that killed your brother, which I'm not saying I do, that information would be classified at levels that could put people currently operating in danger." "So you do know something," Torrance said. It was not a question. Riley met his eyes. "I know that soldiers like your brother, the ones selected for special programs that do not officially exist, they understand the risks. They volunteer knowing they might die in operations their families will never hear about. And they do it anyway because the work matters." "That is not enough," Torrance said. And for the first time, Riley heard the pain underneath his frustration. "I need to know he did not die for nothing. I need to know it meant something." "It meant something," Riley said quietly, and she could not keep the emotion out of her voice entirely. "Your brother was exactly the kind of soldier that program needed. The kind who could learn faster than anyone expected, who could adapt and overcome. The kind who made a difference." Torrance stared at her. "You trained him. You were there." Riley said nothing, but her silence was answer enough. "I have been harassing you," Torrance said slowly, understanding dawning across his face. "Challenging you, questioning your presence here. And all this time, you were one of the people who made my brother into the warrior he became, who gave him the skills that probably kept him alive longer than he would have lasted otherwise." "Chief," Riley started, but Torrance held up his hand. "No, let me finish." He took a breath. "I owe you an apology. Multiple apologies. For treating you like a threat when you were the exact opposite. For using my position to try to intimidate you. For not trusting that maybe there were things about this war I did not and would never understand. You were protecting your team, Riley said. That is what good chiefs do. Maybe, Torrance said, but I was also being an ass. And I am sorry. Riley nodded slowly, accepting the apology. For what it is worth, your brother was a good student. One of the best. Can you tell me anything else? Torrance asked. Anything at all about what happened? No, Riley said gently. I wish I could. But the people still doing that work need the protection that secrecy provides. Torrance nodded, disappointment clear on his face, but understanding there too. I get it. Operational security trumps personal closure. Kyle would have said the same thing. He would have, Riley agreed. They stood in silence for a moment, the morning sun burning through the last of the coastal fog. Around them, the range continued its rhythm of shooting and shouting, oblivious to the quiet understanding being reached between the chief and the woman he had spent weeks trying to expose. 3 days after his conversation with Riley, Torrance found himself sitting in Commander Harding's office, trying to articulate something he barely understood himself. Sir, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Harding leaned back in his chair. This about Ms. Kincaid? Torrance nodded. My brother Kyle died 4 years ago. Army Staff Sergeant. The operation was classified. Details are still buried. But I think she was involved somehow. I think she might have been one of the people training him before he deployed on whatever mission killed him. Harding was quiet for a long moment. What makes you think that? Little things, she said. The way she reacted when I told her about him. And the skills, sir. The shooting capability. That is not regular special operations level. That is something beyond. Beyond, Harding repeated. Chief, what do you know about the Combat Applications Group Female Selection Program that ran from 2017 to 2019? Torrance frowned. I did not know CAG had a female selection program. Officially, they did not. Harding pulled a folder from his desk drawer. This is everything I could gather about Ms. Kincaid through unofficial channels. Which is to say, almost nothing. But what I did learn is that between 2017 and 2019, there was a small, highly classified program that recruited and trained female special operators for missions that male operators could not accomplish. Deep cover work in cultures where women had access men did not. Precision operations requiring someone who could move completely invisible through target environments. Riley, Torrance breathed. The program officially never existed, Harding continued. The women who served in it have no official record of their service. No medals, no commendações, no acknowledgement. They were ghosts by design. And when the program was shut down in 2019, they were cut loose to build civilian lives with new identities and non-disclosure agreements that will follow them to their graves. Torrance felt something cold settle in his stomach. Why are you telling me this, sir? Because I think you deserve to understand who you were dealing with, Harding said. And because those women deserve at least someone knowing what they sacrificed. He paused. Your brother's death. The timing matches operations in Syria, where these female operators were deployed. I cannot confirm it, but if I were guessing, I would say Kyle was part of a joint task force working with that program. Working with Riley, Torrance said. Possibly. Probably even. Harding met his eyes. Chief, these women were trained to a standard that makes our selection look gentle. They operated in conditions that would break most of my shooters. And when they came home, they got nothing. No recognition, no support, no transition assistance. Just new names and orders to disappear. That is why she is here, Torrance realized. At Coronado, at our range. Harding nodded. Where else would she go? She spent years being the best at something that no longer officially exists. This range, these shooters, this is the closest thing she has to her former life. The only place where her skills mean something, even if nobody knows why she has them. Torrance stood abruptly, his mind racing. I need to talk to her again. Chief, Harding warned, but Torrance was already moving. He found Riley at the range 2 hours later, setting up at her usual lane. She looked up as he approached, wariness crossing her features. I know, Torrance said without preamble. About the program. About what you really did. Riley's hands stilled on her rifle case. I do not know what you are talking about. Yes, you do. CAG female selection. The classified program that did not officially exist. The operations in Syria from 2017 to 2019. Torrance kept his voice low. My brother was not just training with special instructors. He was training with you and your team because his unit was going to operate and support your mission. Riley stood slowly, her expression carefully controlled. Even if any of that were true, Chief, I cannot confirm it. You do not have to confirm it, Torrance said. I can see it. Now that I know what to look for, I can see it in everything about you. The way you move, the way you assess threats, the way you shoot. You're not just skilled, you're trained to a level most operators never reach. Please stop, Riley said quietly. I cannot. Torrance stepped closer. Because my brother died on one of your operations. He died doing something that officially never happened, supporting people who officially do not exist. And I need to know if it mattered. If his death served a purpose beyond just being another classified casualty. Riley's composure cracked, just for a moment. Her eyes filled with something that might have been tears or rage or both. You want to know if it mattered? Your brother and 11 other soldiers died, holding a perimeter so that my team could extract 3 high-value targets from a compound in eastern Syria. Those targets gave us intelligence that prevented an attack on a U.S. embassy that would have killed hundreds of Americans. So yes, Chief, it mattered. The words hung between them, stark and terrible and true. Torrance felt his throat tighten. He saved hundreds of lives. Riley continued, her voice rough with emotion. He did not know the full mission parameters. He just knew that he needed to hold that position for 23 minutes. And he did. He held it until the last possible second, until we had our targets secured and were clear. He was a hero, Chief Torrance. The kind that nobody will ever hear about, but a hero nonetheless. Torrance had to look away, overwhelmed by the sudden rush of grief and pride and anger at the unfairness of it all. Why did they shut the program down? Politics, budget, men who could not accept that women could operate at that level. Riley's voice had gone flat. They decided the risk was not worth the reward. Shut us down, gave us new identities, and pretended we never existed. Some of us adjusted. Some did not. And you, Torrance asked, how are you adjusting? I am standing on a Navy range, trying to feel close to the person I used to be, Riley said. You tell me how well I am adjusting. The honesty of it hit Torrance hard. He thought about the last 2 weeks, watching her come to the range alone, shoot with a precision that spoke of muscle memory built through thousands of repetitions, then leave without speaking to anyone. He had thought it was arrogance or secrecy. Now he understood it was grief. I am sorry, he said, for everything. For harassing you, for not understanding, for making this place hostile when it should have been safe. You did not know, Riley said. That does not make it right. Torrance took a breath. What can I do? To make this better? Leave me alone would be the smart answer, Riley said with a ghost of a smile. But honestly, Chief, I think I'm tired of being alone. Torrance nodded slowly. Then maybe we start over. No more suspicion, no more investigation. Just 2 operators who both lost people to missions that officially never happened. Riley extended her hand. Riley Kincaid, former Ghost. Currently, just someone trying to remember how to be a person. Torrance took her hand, feeling the strength in her grip. Brad Torrance, Seal Sniper Instructor. Currently trying to understand how someone can serve their country and get a raise for it. They shook, and in that moment, something shifted. The antagonism that had defined their relationship dissolved, replaced by understanding forged through shared loss and hard truth. Your brother would have made it through the full program, Riley said. If he had survived that mission, he would have been one of the best. Thank you, Torrance said, for telling me, for giving me something I can hold on to. Riley picked up her rifle. Want to shoot? Torrance grinned, some of his usual confidence returning. Sure, but fair warning, I am pretty good. Chief, Riley said, her own smile emerging. I have seen pretty good. You're not even close. That sounded like a challenge. It was. The friendship that formed between Riley and Torrance over the following weeks surprised them both. What started as mutual understanding evolved into genuine camaraderie built on shared language and common wounds. For the first time since the program ended, Riley had someone who knew what she really was and did not see it as a liability. They met at the range 3 mornings a week, shooting side by side and trading techniques that represented decades of combined experience. Torrance brought SEAL precision and aggression. Riley brought something else entirely, a fluidity and adaptability that came from operating in environments where discovery meant death. "You're compensating for wind again," Riley said one morning, watching Torrance's third shot drift right at 700 meters. "You're calculating instead of feeling." "Feeling is not exactly scientific," Torrance replied, but he adjusted his stance anyway. "Neither is war, but we still win." Riley chambered her own round. "Stop thinking about the wind. Become the wind. Let your body make the adjustments before your brain catches up." That is some Zen master nonsense right there. "That is some classified training program nonsense," Riley corrected. "We spent 6 months learning to shoot in conditions that would make your instructors quit. Sandstorms in Syria, monsoons in Southeast Asia, urban environments where wind patterns shifted every 30 seconds. You learn to feel it or you miss your target." Torrance fired again. The shot hit center mass. He grinned. "Okay, Zen Master, I am listening." Their easy banter was interrupted by Diaz approaching with another SEAL, a younger operator named Martinez who looked curious and slightly nervous. "Hate to interrupt, but Martinez here has a question," Diaz said, "about advanced wind reading techniques." Riley looked at the young SEAL, seeing his eagerness and uncertainty. She remembered being that young once, hungry for knowledge and terrified of appearing weak. "Ask." Martinez glanced at Torrance as if seeking permission. The chief nodded encouragingly. "Ma'am, I've been trying to improve my long-range work," Martinez said, "but I keep missing my wind calls at distances over 800 meters. Chief Torrance said you might have some insight." Riley felt something shift in her chest. This was the moment she had been avoiding for 3 years. Teaching meant revealing expertise. Revealing expertise meant questions. But looking at Martinez's earnest face, she realized she was tired of hiding what she knew. "Show me your setup," she said. For the next hour, Riley worked with Martinez, breaking down his technique with a precision that made Diaz stop his own shooting to watch. She identified problems in his breathing pattern, his trigger control, even the way he positioned his support hand. With each correction, Martinez's shooting improved dramatically. "How do you know all this?" Martinez finally asked. "I have been through Scout Sniper School, through advanced courses, and nobody ever explained it like you just did." "Different training philosophy," Riley said simply. "We were taught to master the weapon. I was taught to become part of it." A small crowd had gathered now. 6 SEALs, all watching with the focused attention of professionals recognizing genuine expertise. Riley felt the weight of their scrutiny, but pushed through it. "The weapon is not separate from you," she continued. "It is an extension of your body, your breath, your intent. When you treat it like a tool you control, you create tension. When you treat it like a part of yourself, everything flows naturally." She demonstrated, her movements so smooth they seemed effortless. The rifle rose, settled, fired. 800 meters. Perfect center mass. "That is beautiful," Diaz said quietly. "I have never seen anyone shoot with that little wasted motion." Torrance caught Riley's eye, a question in his expression. She gave a small nod. If she was going to stop hiding, she might as well commit to it fully. Riley trained with a program that most of us have never heard of, Torrance told the gathered SEALs. A program that operated at a level above even our standards. "What she is showing you is not theory. It is battlefield-tested technique that saved lives in operations we will never read about." The SEALs exchanged glances, processing this information. Martinez spoke first. "Ma'am, would you be willing to teach us more? Officially, I mean?" Riley looked at the young faces surrounding her, all of them hungry for the knowledge she possessed. She thought about the 3 years she had spent diminishing herself, pretending her expertise was a secret to be ashamed of rather than a gift to be shared. She thought about Kyle Torrance and the 11 other soldiers who had died protecting her mission. They had sacrificed everything so that she could complete her work. Hiding that work dishonored their memory. "I would need Commander Harding's approval," Riley said. "This is his facility and his team." "Already have it." Harding's voice came from behind them. The commander approached with his characteristic calm authority. I have been watching your informal instruction for the past 20 minutes. If you are willing to share your knowledge, Ms. Kincaid, I would be honored to have you train my shooters. Riley felt emotion tighten her throat. For 3 years, she had been invisible by necessity and then by habit. Now people who understood exactly what she was were asking her to step back into the light. On one condition, Riley said, no questions about my background beyond what Chief Torrance has already shared. No digging into my service record. This stays focused on technique and training. Agreed, Harding said immediately. Your past is your own, Ms. Kincaid, but your knowledge belongs to the next generation of warriors who need it. Then yes, Riley said, I will teach them everything I know. The SEALs broke into grins. Martinez actually looked like he might hug her before catching himself and settling for an enthusiastic handshake instead. As the group dispersed to set up for an impromptu training session, Torrance pulled Riley aside. You sure about this? Once you start teaching, you cannot go back to being anonymous. I know, Riley said, but maybe anonymous was never the goal. Maybe the goal was just finding a place where I could be myself again, even partially. This is that place. Riley looked around at the range, at the SEALs setting up their rifles with renewed purpose, at Torrance standing beside her as an ally instead of an adversary. Yeah, I think maybe it is. Over the next 2 weeks, Riley became an unofficial fixture at Coronado. She arrived 3 mornings a week to work with small groups of SEALs, sharing techniques that had been developed in the classified program and refined through operations most of them would never know existed. She taught them about shooting in extreme conditions, about reading environments instead of just wind meters, about the mental discipline required to make impossible shots under impossible pressure. The SEALs absorbed everything she offered with the intensity of students who recognized a master when they saw one. Word spread through the teams about the mysterious civilian woman who shot like a ghost and taught like someone who had learned these lessons in blood. Commander Harding watched it all with quiet approval, seeing his shooters evolve under Riley's instruction in ways that years of traditional training had not accomplished. But it was Torrance who saw the change in Riley herself. The shadows that had lived behind her eyes were fading. Her movements carried less tension. She smiled more, laughed occasionally, and seemed to occupy space in the world rather than trying to minimize her presence within it. You look different, he told her after a particularly successful training session. Lighter somehow. Riley considered this. I think I forgot what purpose felt like. Helping these guys, teaching them what I learned, it reminds me why I did all of this in the first place. Not for recognition or medals, but to make a difference, to pass on knowledge that could save lives. Kyle would have loved this, Torrance said, watching you teach. He was always going on about how the best operators were the ones who could teach what they knew. Your brother was smart, Riley said softly. I wish I could have told him that. You just did, Torrance replied. And somehow, I think he knows. 6 weeks into Riley's informal instruction program, Commander Harding called her into his office. Torrance was already there, along with a Navy captain Riley did not recognize. The atmosphere was serious, almost ceremonial. Ms. Kincaid, thank you for coming, Harding said. This is Captain Robert Chun, commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare Group 1. Riley shook the captain's hand, feeling suddenly uncertain about where this was heading. Ms. Kincaid, I have been hearing remarkable things about your work with our shooters, Chun said. Commander Harding tells me you have improved the long-range capabilities of his team significantly in just 6 weeks. Techniques they have been struggling with for years, you taught them in a matter of sessions. I have had good students, Riley replied carefully. You have had adequate students who became exceptional under your instruction, Chun corrected. There's a difference. He glanced at Harding before continuing. We would like to make your position here official. Not just in formal instruction, but an actual training role. Civilian contractor status with appropriate clearance and compensation. Riley felt the floor shift beneath her. Sir, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure that is possible given my background. Your background is precisely why it is possible, Chun said. We know enough to understand you are part of something extraordinary. We do not need the details. What we need is the expertise you clearly possess applied to the next generation of our operators. There would be conditions, Harding added. No public recognition. No official record of your service history. You would be listed simply as a contractor with specialized skills. Your past remains classified. Why? Riley asked. Why take the risk of bringing me unofficially when the informal arrangement has been working? Because what you're teaching matters, Chen said bluntly. In the past 6 weeks, your students have demonstrated capabilities that typically take years to develop. If we can accelerate that development across all our sniper teams, we could save lives. American lives and Allied lives. Riley looked at Torrance, who gave her an encouraging nod. She thought about the past 6 weeks, about rediscovering purpose through teaching, about watching young SEALs transform under her instruction. She thought about Kyle Torrance and the others who had died so her missions could succeed. This was a way to honor that sacrifice, to ensure their deaths led to something meaningful. I would need complete autonomy over curriculum and methods, Riley said. No interference from traditional instructors who think they know better. Agreed, Chen said immediately. And I want the ability to reject students who are not ready. I will not waste time on people who are not committed to learning. Also agreed. And one more thing. Riley met Chen's eyes directly. I want credit for my students' successes to go to them, not to me. No publicity. No articles about the mysterious civilian instructor. They earn their achievements. I'm just a guide. Chen smiled. That might be the most operator thing I have ever heard. You have a deal, Ms. Kincaid. They shook hands, and Riley felt something settle into place. For the first time since the program ended, she had a role that fit. Not her old life, but something new built on the foundation of what she had learned and survived. There is one more thing, Harding said. We would like you to do a demonstration, a formal one, for the senior leadership of Naval Special Warfare. Show them what you have been teaching and why it matters. Riley's stomach tightened. How formal are we talking? 20 to 30 officers. Controlled environment. You would demonstrate advanced techniques and explain the methodology behind them. Harding paused. I know you prefer to stay out of the spotlight, but this would help justify the resources we are allocating to your program. When? Riley asked. 2 weeks. We would hold it here at Coronado, limited attendance, no media. Riley looked at Torrance again. He gave her another nod, and she saw something else in his expression. Pride. He was proud of her, proud that she was being recognized for her capabilities even in this limited way. Okay, Riley said. I will do it. Excellent, Chen said. We will handle all the logistics. You just focus on showing them what makes your method special. After the captain left, Riley remained in Harding's office with Torrance. Her hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline from the commitment she had just made. You good? Torrance asked. I think so. Riley took a deep breath. This is real now. Not just me helping out informally. This is stepping back into a version of who I used to be. Is that a bad thing? Harding asked gently. No, Riley said. Just scary. I spent 3 years trying to be invisible. Now, I am about to stand in front of 30 officers and demonstrate capabilities I was supposed to pretend I never had. You are not alone in this, Torrance said. I will be there. Diaz will be there. Every SEAL you have trained will be there supporting you. And if they start asking questions about my background, then you do what you have always done, Harding said. You give them nothing but what they need to know. Your methods speak for themselves. Your past is irrelevant to what you are teaching now. Riley nodded, trying to convince herself he was right. But deep down, she knew that standing in front of senior military leadership and demonstrating elite-level capabilities would invite exactly the scrutiny she had been avoiding. Someone would ask questions. Someone would dig. And once they started digging, there was no telling what might surface. 2 weeks, she said. I could prepare something good in 2 weeks. Something good is not what we need, Torrance said with a slight grin. We need something unforgettable, something that makes every officer in that room understand why you are worth the security risk and the bureaucratic headache. No pressure, Riley said dryly. You have handled worse pressure than a room full of officers, Torrance reminded her. You have handled pressure that would break most of them. This is just showing them a fraction of what you can do. He was right, Riley realized. She had operated in conditions these officers would never experience, had made shots under stress they could not imagine. A controlled demonstration in a safe environment should be nothing by comparison. But it felt like everything, because for the first time since the program ended, she would be visible, knowable, real. The question was whether she was ready to be seen again. Over the next 2 weeks, Riley threw herself into preparation. She designed a demonstration that would showcase the key principles she had been teaching without revealing the full extent of her capabilities. A careful balance between impressive and overwhelming. Torrance helped her refine the presentation, offering insights into what would resonate with senior leadership and what might raise uncomfortable questions. They practiced in the evenings after the range closed, Riley running through her demonstration while Torrance played the role of skeptical observer. "You're holding back," he said after one practice run. "I can see it. You're doing maybe 70% of what you are capable of." "That is the point," Riley replied. "I want to show them enough to justify the program without showing them so much that they start questioning how I learned it." "Screw that," Torrance said. "Show them everything. These are warriors, Riley. They respect capability. They will not care how you learned it if you can prove it works." Riley shook her head. "You do not understand. There are people who would see my capabilities as a threat, who would see a woman with my skills as something that needs to be controlled or contained. I cannot give them that ammunition." "Then show them you are not a threat," Torrance argued. "Show them you are an asset. The best way to do that is to demonstrate exactly how good you are and then make it clear you're using those skills to make their people better." Riley considered this. It went against every instinct she had developed over 3 years of hiding. But maybe Torrance was right. Maybe the only way forward was to stop apologizing for what she could do and start owning it completely. "Okay," she said. "No more holding back. They want to see what makes my method special. I will show them exactly that." Torrance grinned. "Now you're talking like the operator I know you are." The demonstration was scheduled for Friday morning. As Riley drove to Coronado that day, her hands were steady on the wheel, but her mind was racing. This was the point of no return. After today, she would never be anonymous again. She would be known, recognized, visible. The observation area overlooking the range was crowded with officers when Riley arrived. Captains and commanders, a few lieutenant commanders, even a rear admiral. All of them wore expressions of polite skepticism. They had seen countless demonstrations over their careers. One more civilian contractor promising revolutionary techniques was just another Friday morning. Riley stood at the firing line with her rifle, feeling the weight of 30 sets of eyes. Torrance and Diaz flanked her, along with Martinez and 3 other SEALs she had been training. They were there as both support and living proof of her methods. Commander Harding made the introductions, keeping Riley's background deliberately vague. Ms. Kincaid is a civilian contractor with extensive experience in precision marksmanship. Over the past 8 weeks, she has been working with select members of SEAL Team 7 with remarkable results. Today, she will demonstrate some of the techniques she has been teaching. Riley stepped forward, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Thank you, Commander. What I'm going to show you today is not about flashy shooting or breaking records. It is about a fundamental shift in how we approach long-range precision work. A shift from controlling the weapon to becoming one with it." She could see the skepticism deepen. Philosophical approaches to shooting were not what these men respected. They respected results. "I'm going to demonstrate 5 shots at varying distances and conditions," Riley continued. "After each shot, one of my students will attempt the same shot using traditional methods, then attempt it again using the techniques I've taught them. The difference will speak for itself." "Fair enough," the rear admiral said. "Show us what you have got, Ms. Kincaid." Riley settled into position at lane 7. The first target sat at 600 meters, standard distance, no wind complications. She fired without hesitation. Center mass. Martinez stepped up, fired using his old technique. The shot hit low and left, a respectable grouping but not centered. Then he reset, applied Riley's breathing method, and fired again. Dead center. The officers stirred with mild interest. Improvement was good, but not revolutionary. Second target, Riley said. 800 meters, 15-mile-per-hour crosswind from the east. She fired. Perfect compensation, center mass hit. Then she nodded to another SEAL, Petty Officer Chun, who attempted the shot. His first attempt missed entirely, blown off target by the wind. His second attempt, using Riley's wind-reading technique, hit outer ring. Getting warmer, one of the captains muttered. Third target, Riley announced. 1,000 meters, variable wind, elevated position requiring angle compensation. This was where traditional methods started to break down. Riley took 30 seconds to read the environment, feeling the wind patterns, the temperature gradients, the subtle air movements that meters could not measure. Then she fired. The shot took nearly 2 full seconds to reach the target. It hit exactly where she had aimed, accounting for every variable. Diaz attempted next. His traditional method put him 3 feet low. His attempt with Riley's technique hit the outer edge of the target. Close, but not perfect. The officers were leaning forward now. This was getting interesting. Fourth target, Riley said, and her voice carried a new edge. 1,200 meters, multiple wind shifts, target partially obscured by atmospheric distortion. This was beyond standard SEAL qualification distances. This was specialist territory, the kind of shot that required years of experience and perfect conditions. Riley studied the target for a full minute, her breathing so controlled it was barely visible. Then she fired. The round flew true, cutting through shifting air currents and heat shimmer to strike center mass. The observation area went silent. One of the commanders stood up to get a better view of the target monitor. No one else attempted that shot. It was understood that what Riley had just done was beyond traditional training methods entirely. Fifth target, Riley said quietly. 1,500 meters. Extreme distance. Conditions deliberately made difficult. She could feel the tension in the room now. 1,500 meters was sniper specialist territory. Very few operators could consistently hit targets at that range, and those who could spend years developing the skill. Riley closed her eyes for a moment, centering herself. She thought about the missions where she had made shots like this under conditions far worse than a sunny California morning. She thought about Kyle Torrance and the 11 others who had died trusting that she could do the impossible when it mattered. She opened her eyes, settled into position, and became absolutely still. The world narrowed to breath and heartbeat, and the invisible line connecting her rifle to the distant target. She fired. The shot seemed to hang in the air forever. Riley did not need the monitor to know where it would land. She felt it, the same way she had felt hundreds of shots in places that did not exist on maps. Dead center. The rear admiral stood, walked to the monitor, stared at it for a long moment, then turned to look at Riley with an expression of pure astonishment. Ms. Kincaid, in 32 years of military service, I have never seen shooting like that. Thank you, sir, Riley said. That is not a compliment, the admiral said. That is a statement of fact bordering on disbelief. He looked at Harding. Commander, where did you find her? That is classified, sir, Harding replied smoothly. What matters is that she is here now and willing to share her knowledge. The admiral turned back to Riley. Can you teach others to shoot like that? Riley gestured to her students. Petty Officer Martinez has improved his effective range by 300 meters in 6 weeks. Petty Officer Chun can now make shots in conditions that would have been impossible for him 2 months ago. Chief Torrance, who is already an exceptional shooter, has refined his technique to a level he describes as transformative. Torrance stepped forward. Sir, what Ms. Kincaid has taught us is not just about shooting. It is about reading environments, about trusting our bodies to process information faster than our minds can calculate it. She has given us tools that apply far beyond the range. The Admiral considered this. Ms. Kincaid, I'm going to be direct. Your capabilities suggest training and experience that goes far beyond civilian instruction. I'm not going to ask about your background because Commander Harding has made it clear that information is restricted. But I need to know this. Are you committed to using these skills to make our people better? Absolutely, sir, Riley said without hesitation. Everything I know, everything I learned, it should not die with me. These men are going into situations where the difference between a good shot and a perfect shot is measured in lives saved or lost. If I can give them even a fraction of what I learned, then that is where this knowledge belongs. The Admiral nodded slowly. Captain Shun, make whatever arrangements are necessary. Ms. Kincaid is now officially attached to Naval Special Warfare Training Command as a senior contractor. Full access, appropriate clearance, whatever resources she needs. Sir, one of the captains interjected, should we not vet her background more thoroughly before granting that level of access? The Rear Admiral's expression hardened. Captain, I just watched a demonstration of skill that represents either decades of elite military training or something bordering on supernatural talent. Either way, I want that capability training our people. Her background is clearly classified for good reason. We respect that classification and move forward. He walked up to Riley, extended his hand. Welcome to Naval Special Warfare, Ms. Kincaid. Officially this time. Riley shook his hand, feeling the weight of what had just happened settle over her. She was no longer hiding. She was no longer pretending to be less than she was. She was stepping back into the light, into purpose, into the role she had been trained for all those years ago. As the officers filed out, discussing what they had witnessed, Torrance approached Riley with a wide grin. You absolutely crushed that. I did not hold back, Riley said, still processing everything. No, you did not. And look what happened. They did not question you. They did not demand your background. They saw capability and recognized its value. Torrance put a hand on her shoulder. You earned this, Riley. Every bit of it. The moment was interrupted by a SEAL approaching with his rifle. The young operator looked nervous but determined. Ma'am, I know you probably have 100 officers want to talk to you, but I have been struggling with my trigger control, and I was wondering if maybe you could look at it for just a minute. Riley smiled, the tension of the demonstration finally releasing. Of course. Show me what you're working with. As she settled in to help the young SEAL, Torrance watched with quiet satisfaction. This was who Riley was meant to be. Not hidden in shadows, not diminished by secrecy, but standing in full view, teaching the next generation of warriors to be better than they ever thought possible. 3 days after the demonstration, Riley arrived at Coronado to find the atmosphere had shifted completely. Where before she had been an outsider tolerated on the range, now SEALs nodded to her with genuine respect. Some stopped to ask questions. Others simply watched her shoot with the focus of students studying a master. Word had spread beyond just Team 7. SEALs from other teams started showing up during her training sessions, standing at the back to observe, taking mental notes on techniques they had never seen before. Riley found herself teaching larger groups, sharing knowledge that had been locked away for 3 years. But the most significant change came from an unexpected source. Ms. Kincaid, Commander Harding, said one morning, I have a request that goes beyond your current teaching scope. We have a situation developing. Riley set down her rifle case. What kind of situation? A joint training exercise with Army Rangers and Marine Scout snipers. 3 weeks from now at 29 Palms. The scenario involves long-range interdiction in desert conditions. Harding paused. The Admiral specifically requested that you participate as a demonstrator and instructor. Show the other services what we have been developing here. Riley felt her stomach tighten. That is a lot of visibility, Commander. It is, Harding agreed, but it is also an opportunity to spread your methods beyond naval special warfare. What you have taught my men could benefit Rangers and Marines facing the same challenges in the same environments. 3 weeks, Riley said. That is fast. The Admiral does not waste time when he sees value. Harding smiled slightly. Torrance has already volunteered to assist, as have Diaz and Martinez. You would not be doing this alone. Riley thought about it. 3 years ago, she would have refused immediately. Too much exposure, too much risk. But she was not the same person who had left the program broken and bitter. She had found purpose again, had remembered why the training mattered in the first place. I will do it, Riley said, but I won't bring my best students. Show what these techniques can produce with dedicated practice. Already planned for, Harding said. You will have a team of 8 SEALs, all students you have personally trained. The demonstration will be collaborative, showing both your capabilities and theirs. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of intensive preparation. Riley worked with her students daily, refining their skills and building demonstrations that would showcase the methods without overwhelming the observers. They practiced in conditions simulating the desert environment of 29 Palms, adapting techniques for heat and different wind patterns. Torrance became her de facto assistant instructor, helping manage the larger groups and providing insight into how Army and Marine cultures would respond to her teaching style. He pushed her to be more direct, less apologetic about her expertise. "You keep saying things like maybe this will help, or you might try this," Torrance said after one practice session. "Stop hedging. You know this works. Tell it works." "Old habits," Riley admitted. "I spent so long trying not to stand out." "Those days are over," Torrance said firmly. "You stood out the moment you made that 1,500-meter shot in front of the Admiral. Might as well own it completely." The joint exercise at 29 Palms brought together over 200 special operations personnel. Riley stood at the edge of the massive training area, watching Rangers and Marines set up their equipment alongside the SEALs she had been training. The scale of it was intimidating. "Big crowd," Diaz said, coming to stand beside her. "Bigger than I expected," Riley agreed. "You good?" "Ask me after the demonstration." The format was straightforward. Riley and her SEAL students would demonstrate advanced techniques. Then instructors from each service would attempt to replicate them with their own shooters. The goal was not competition, but education, showing what was possible with different approaches to the same challenges. Riley started with environmental reading, demonstrating how to assess wind and atmospheric conditions without relying solely on instruments. She made 3 shots at varying distances, each one accounting for complex variables, then explained her process in terms that made it accessible rather than mystical. Army Ranger instructors watched intently, asking sharp questions about application in different terrains. Marine Scout sniper leaders challenged some of her assertions, then grudgingly acknowledged the results when her students replicated the techniques successfully. But the moment that changed everything came in the afternoon session. Riley had just finished explaining advanced breathing techniques when a Ranger Sergeant Major approached. "Ma'am, I've been shooting for 23 years, been an instructor for 12, and I have never heard some of these concepts explained the way you just did." "Different training background," Riley said, giving her standard deflection. The Sergeant Major studied her with the assessing gaze of someone who had seen a lot of operators over a long career. "Ma'am, I know classified training when I see it. I'm not asking about your background, but I want you to know that whatever program produced you, they did something right. What you're sharing here could change how we train our snipers across multiple services." "That is the goal, Sergeant Major," Riley said, making sure the knowledge does not stay buried. "Semper Fi," a Marine gunnery sergeant said, approaching the conversation. "Ma'am, that is what matters. Sharing what works so more of our people come home." The respect in their voices, the acknowledgement of her expertise without demanding her credentials, hit Riley harder than she expected. These were warriors from different services, different cultures, different traditions. But they recognized capability when they saw it and valued knowledge over politics. As the day continued, Riley found herself surrounded by instructors from all 3 services, all asking questions, all eager to learn. Torrance and her SEAL students helped manage the crowd, demonstrating techniques and answering questions while Riley worked with small groups. Late in the afternoon, during a brief break, a young Marine corporal approached Riley hesitantly. "Ma'am, I know you are busy, but I was hoping you might look at my rifle setup for a second. I keep pulling shots left, and I cannot figure out why." Riley smiled, remembering another young Marine months ago with the same problem. "Show me." As she worked with the corporal, making minute adjustments to his grip and stance, a Ranger captain approached carrying his own rifle. "Ma'am, when you are done with a Marine, could I get your opinion on my trigger control? I feel like I'm doing something wrong, but cannot identify it." Behind him, 3 more shooters waited with their own questions. Riley looked at the growing line and felt something shift in her chest. This was what her training had always been meant for. Not hiding in classified programs, not operating in shadows, but teaching the next generation to be better than they thought possible. She caught Torrance's eye across the range. He grinned and mouthed, "Told you." The demonstration wrapped up at sunset with an impromptu gathering of instructors from all three services. The commanding officers thanked Riley formally, but it was the quiet conversations with individual shooters that meant more. The sergeant major who asked for her contact information to coordinate future training. The Marine gunnery sergeant who invited her to observe their advanced course. The ranger captain who wanted to bring his entire sniper section to Coronado for intensive instruction. As they drove back that evening, Torrance was unusually quiet. Finally, he spoke. "You know what today was?" "What?" "The day you stopped being a ghost and became a legend." Those instructors are going to talk about this demonstration for years. About the civilian contractor who taught techniques they had never seen. About the woman who could outshoot anyone and taught with patience that made everyone better. Riley shook her head. "I'm not looking to be a legend, Chief. I just want to do the work." "Too late," Torrance said with a laugh. "You are already there. The question is what you do with it." Riley did not answer immediately. She thought about the young Marine with a rifle problem, about the ranger captain seeking advice, about the gathering respect from warriors who measured worth in capability rather than credentials. She thought about Kyle Torrance and the others who had died, and about honoring their sacrifice by ensuring their example led to something meaningful. "I keep teaching," Riley said finally. "That is what I do with it. I take everything I learned in those classified years, and I make sure it saves lives going forward." "Perfect answer," Torrance said. "Kyle will be proud." For months after the joint exercise, Riley had settled into a rhythm that felt like the life she had always been meant to live. She spent 3 days a week at Coronado teaching SEAL students, one day consulting with Marine Scout snipers at Camp Pendleton, and occasional weekends working with Army Rangers at various facilities across the Southwest. Her calendar was full, her purpose clear, but it was the small moments that told her how much had changed. She walked into the Coronado Range one Tuesday morning to find a handwritten note taped to Lane 7. "Thanks for everything, Ms. K. Made my first real-world shot last week. Target at 892 meters, high wind. Thought of you the whole time. Nailed it. Semper Fi, Corporal Rodriguez." Riley carefully folded the note and slipped it into her pocket, adding it to the growing collection she kept in a box at home. Each one represented a life potentially saved, a mission successfully completed, knowledge passed forward. Torrance found her a few minutes later, already setting up for the day's session. "Got a surprise for you." Riley looked up to see Commander Harding approaching with a woman in Navy uniform. Lieutenant Commander, based on her collar insignia. But it was her face that made Riley's breath catch. Another woman, another female operator, or at least someone who had that particular look in her eyes. The one that came from seeing things civilians never saw. "Ms. Kincaid," Harding said, "I would like you to meet Lieutenant Commander Sarah Vance. She's with a program I cannot name, doing work I cannot describe. But when she heard about your training methods, she requested a meeting." Vance extended her hand, and Riley shook it, feeling the strength in the other woman's grip. "Ms. Kincaid, I have been following your work with great interest. What you have accomplished here is remarkable." "Thank you, Commander," Riley said carefully. Vance glanced at Harding, who nodded and stepped away to give them privacy. When she spoke again, her voice was low. "I was part of the second iteration, the program that came after yours ended. Different structure, different mission set, but same basic concept. Female operators for specialized roles." Riley felt her chest tighten. "They continued it? In a limited capacity. Very limited." Vance's expression was carefully controlled. "We do not have your level of training or resources. But what we do have is a desperate need for the kind of expertise you possess. I was hoping you might consider sharing some of your knowledge with our people." Riley looked at this woman, seeing herself 5 years ago. Dedicated, capable, operating in shadows without recognition or support. The program that had trained Riley had at least given her world-class instruction before cutting her loose. This new iteration sounded like it was doing more with less, putting women in danger without adequate preparation. "What kind of timeline are we talking about?" Riley asked. 2 weeks. Intensive course. Just 6 students, all carefully vetted. Vance paused. I cannot offer much compensation. This is not official through any normal channels. But I can offer you the chance to ensure the next generation does not make the same mistakes we did. That they get the training they need before they are sent into situations that could kill them. Riley thought about the women who had served alongside her in the original program. Some had thrived. Others had been broken by the experience and the aftermath. If there was a chance to give the next generation better tools, better preparation, better odds of survival, how could she refuse? I will do it, Riley said. On one condition. After the 2 weeks, you keep me informed about these operators. If they need additional training, if they run into problems I can help solve, you contact me. I will not train them and then abandon them the way we were abandoned. Vance's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing genuine emotion. Deal. And thank you, Miss Kincaid. You have no idea what this means. After Vance left, Torrance rejoined Riley. That looked intense. It was Riley said, and it is going to get more intense. I just agreed to train a group of female operators in 2 weeks. Torrance whistled low. You're taking on the world, one group of shooters at a time. Someone has to, Riley said. And apparently, I am the only one left from the original program who is willing to step out of the shadows and teach what we learned. The 2-week intensive course was unlike anything Riley had taught before. The 6 women who arrived were already capable operators, but their training had gaps that made Riley's stomach turn. They knew the basics of precision shooting, but lacked the advanced environmental reading that made the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Riley worked them 12 hours a day, compressing months of instruction into 2 weeks of relentless practice. She taught them to read wind like a language, to become invisible in urban and rural environments, to make impossible shots under impossible pressure. She shared everything she knew, holding nothing back. On the final day, after the last qualification exercise, one of the students approached Riley privately. The woman, a Navy petty officer named Chun, had tears in her eyes. Ma'am, I do not know how to thank you. Before this course, I was terrified every time they sent me out. I knew I was not prepared for what they were asking me to do. Now I feel like I might actually survive this. Riley pulled the young woman into a brief embrace. You're going to do more than survive. You're going to excel. And when you run into problems, you contact me. I meant what I said. You're not alone in this. After the students left, Riley sat alone on the range, watching the sun set over the Pacific. Torrance found her there an hour later. Heard the course went well, he said, settling beside her. It did. Those women are going to be formidable. Riley paused, but it made me realize something. There are probably dozens of female operators out there, working in programs I do not even know about, struggling because they do not have access to proper training. Women who are being sent into danger without the tools they need. So what are you going to do about it? Torrance asked. I'm going to find them, Riley said. However I can. Through quiet channels, through word of mouth, through connections like Vance. And I'm going to make sure they get the training they deserve. That is a big mission, Torrance observed. Someone has to do it, Riley said. The men who designed these programs, they were so focused on proving women could operate at elite levels that they forgot to ensure we had the support systems to sustain it. I can fix that, at least partially. Kyle would definitely be proud, Torrance said quietly. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the light fade. Riley thought about how far she had come from the broken, isolated woman who had first arrived at this range 6 months ago. She had found purpose, community, and most importantly, a way to honor the sacrifice of those who had died protecting her missions. Her phone buzzed. A text from Commander Harding. The Admiral wants to discuss expanding your program. Interested in training additional teams across naval special warfare? Riley smiled and typed back a single word. Absolutely. You know, Torrance said, watching her, when I first met you, I thought you were a threat. Someone playing at being an operator. Now I cannot imagine this place without you. Funny how things work out, Riley said. Funny is not the word I would use, Torrance replied. More like fate. Or justice. You spent years serving in secret, giving everything and getting nothing. Now you're finally getting the recognition you deserve, even if it is unofficial. Recognition is nice, Riley admitted, but that is not why I do this. I do it because I remember what it was like to be a young operator, terrified and inadequate, desperately needing someone to show me how to survive. I do it because those women I just trained deserve every advantage I can give them. I do it because Kyle and the others who died protecting my missions, their sacrifice should lead to something more than classified reports that nobody reads. That is why you're good at this, Torrance said, because you remember what it felt like to need it. Riley stood, stretching muscles tired from 2 weeks of intensive instruction. Ready to head out? Actually, Torrance said, I have one more surprise for you. He led her to the team room, where Riley found it packed with SEALs. Martinez Diaz, the young Marine Corporal Carter who she had helped months ago, now wearing his Scout Sniper badge. Dozens of students she had trained over the past months. Even Commander Harding and Captain Shun. What is this? Riley asked. This, Harding said, stepping forward, is us saying thank you. Officially and unofficially. You have transformed how we train our snipers. You have shared knowledge that most people would have kept secret. And you have done it with patience and dedication that goes beyond any contract or compensation. He handed Riley a framed photograph. It showed her on the range, surrounded by students, all of them focused on a target downrange. The caption read, "Excellence shared is excellence multiplied." This is not a medal, Harding continued. We cannot give you those for service that officially never happened. But this is our way of saying that you matter. What you teach matters, and we're grateful you chose to share it with us. Riley felt her throat tighten, emotion overwhelming her careful control. Thank you, she managed. All of you. This means more than you know. 6 months after that recognition ceremony, Riley Kincaid stood at Lane 7 on a crisp November morning, preparing for what had become her favorite part of the week. Advanced instruction with a mixed group of SEALs, Rangers, and Marines, all hungry to learn what she had spent a lifetime perfecting. But today was different. Today marked exactly 1 year since she had first walked onto this range as a broken, isolated woman trying to feel close to the life she had lost. She was setting up her rifle when she heard familiar footsteps. Torrance approached carrying 2 cups of coffee, a ritual that had developed over months of early morning sessions. 1 year anniversary, he said, handing her a cup. Feels like longer. And shorter, Riley said, accepting the coffee. Sometimes I still cannot believe this is real. That I get to do this every day. Believe it, Torrance said. You have trained over 200 shooters in the past year. Changed how 3 different services approach precision marksmanship. Built a network of female operators who finally have someone they can turn to for support and training. That is not a dream. That is a legacy. Riley sipped her coffee, watching the sun climb over the Pacific. Legacy. A year ago, she had thought her legacy was buried in classified files that nobody would ever read. Now, it was written in the improved capabilities of warriors who would carry her lessons into future battles. Speaking of legacy, Torrance continued, I got a call yesterday from my sister. She is Army, works in personnel. She said there is talk at the Pentagon about formalizing training programs for female special operators, creating official pipelines with proper support structures. Riley turned to him sharply. Are you serious? Dead serious. Apparently, the success stories coming out of your training have reached some important desks. People are starting to ask why we are relying on one civilian contractor when this should be an institutional capability. Torrance paused. They want to model the formal program on what you have built here. That was always the goal, Riley said quietly. Not to be the only one teaching this, but to prove it could be taught. To show that women could operate at this level if given proper training and support. Well, you proved it. Multiple times over. Torrance smiled, which means you might have just put yourself out of a job. Riley laughed. There will always be more to teach. And besides, even if they formalize the training, someone has to teach the instructors. Might as well be me. The morning session began with 15 students, a mix of experienced shooters and newer operators. Riley moved among them, making small corrections, asking questions that led them to discover solutions themselves, sharing stories from her own experience without revealing classified details. Halfway through the session, She noticed a seal she did not recognize standing at the back, watching intently. Young, maybe mid-20s, with the bearing of someone still proving himself. When she made eye contact, he straightened slightly but did not approach. During the break, Riley walked over to him. "I do not think we have met." "Riley Kincaid." "Petty Officer Jackson, ma'am," he said, shaking her hand. "I am new to Team 7. Just got here last week. Everyone keeps telling me I need to get into your training rotation, that you are the person to learn from." Riley smiled. "They're being generous. I just share what I know." "Ma'am, with respect, I've been asking around about you," Jackson said. "And the stories I hear, they're not about generosity. They're about excellence. About someone who can shoot better than anyone they have ever seen and has the patience to teach it." "What you hear is exaggerated," Riley said. "I am just someone who spent a long time learning these skills and wants to pass them on." "That is what Chief Torrance said you would say," Jackson replied with a slight grin. "He also said not to believe you when you downplay your capabilities. Said you are the real deal, and I should listen to everything you teach." "The chief talks too much," Riley said, but she was smiling. She spent the next hour working with Jackson, assessing his baseline skills and identifying areas for improvement. He was good, well-trained in fundamentals, but lacking the advanced techniques that separated competent shooters from exceptional ones. By the end of the session, she had given him a personalized training plan and scheduled him into her regular rotation. As the students dispersed, Riley found herself alone on the range with Torrance once again. He had stayed back, watching her work with the same quiet satisfaction he always showed when her teaching clicked with a student. "You are good at this," he said. "Better than any instructor I have ever seen." "I had good teachers," Riley replied. "People who cared enough to push me beyond what I thought possible." "And now you are doing the same for the next generation," Torrance said. "That is the definition of honoring your training, making sure the knowledge survives and grows." Riley looked out at the range, at the targets that had witnessed her transformation from ghost to mentor. She thought about Kyle Torrance and the others who had died, about the classified missions that officially never happened, about the program that had forged her into something extraordinary and then tried to erase her. But she had not been erased. She had evolved, found a way to serve that did not require shadows or secrecy, found a community that valued her for exactly what she was. "You know what the best part is?" Riley said. "Every student I train, every operator who goes downrange with skills I taught them, that is a piece of those classified missions continuing to matter. Kyle and the others did not die for nothing. Their sacrifice enabled missions that gave me the knowledge I am sharing now. That is a legacy worth building." "Amen to that," Torrance said. Riley's phone buzzed. A message from Lieutenant Commander Vance. "One of your students just completed her first solo operation. Flawless execution. She credits your training with giving her the confidence and capability to succeed. Thank you for everything you do." Riley showed Torrance the message. He read it and nodded. "That never gets old, does it? Seeing the impact." "Never," Riley agreed. "So what is next?" Torrance asked. "You have conquered naval special warfare training. You're consulting with multiple services. You are building networks for female operators. Where do you go from here?" "Wherever I am needed," Riley said. "There are always more students, always new techniques to develop, always ways to improve how we prepare warriors for what they will face." She paused. "And maybe if the Pentagon does formalize female operator training, I help build that program. Make sure it's done right this time." From ghost to institution builder, Torrance mused. "That is quite a journey. Better than the alternative," Riley said. "Better than staying hidden, letting the knowledge die, pretending those years never happened." They walked toward the parking lot together, the morning sun now fully above the horizon. Riley felt the weight of her rifle case, the familiar comfort of the weapon that had been her constant companion through so many changes. "Hey, Riley," Torrance said as they reached their vehicles. "I never asked you this, but I've been wondering. Do you ever regret it? The classified years, the erasure, all of it?" Riley considered the question carefully. "Sometimes I regret the cost. The isolation, the inability to claim my service, the way they cut us loose without support. But the work itself, the training, the missions, the chance to prove that women could operate at that level? No, I do not regret that. It made me who I am. And who I am is someone who can make a real difference now. That is a good answer, Torrance said. It is an honest answer, Riley replied. If you enjoyed this story, please drop a comment and let us know your favorite part, character, or if you have had a similar situation happen to you before. Riley drove home that afternoon with a sense of peace she had not felt in years. Her apartment was still small, still modest, but it no longer felt like a hiding place. It felt like a base of operations for someone with purpose and mission. She made dinner, answered emails from students with questions, reviewed training schedules for the coming weeks. Normal activities for someone living a normal life. Except her life was anything but normal. It was extraordinary, built from the ashes of a program that had tried to erase her. That night, Riley pulled out the box of notes from students. She added Corporal Rodriguez's message and Lieutenant Commander Vance's text. The collection had grown substantial over the past year, each one a testament to knowledge shared and lives potentially saved. Tomorrow she would return to Coronado and teach another group of warriors to be better than they thought possible. The day after that, she would consult with Marine Scout snipers on desert tactics. The following week, she would begin a new intensive course for female operators who desperately needed what she knew. Riley Kincaid, the woman who officially did not exist, who had served in operations that never happened, who had been trained to a standard few would ever reach, had found her place in the world. Not in shadows or secrets, but in the light of shared knowledge and earned respect. She was no longer a ghost. She was a teacher, a mentor, a bridge between classified excellence and institutional capability. And every student she trained, every operator she helped become better, was proof that service could transcend official recognition. Her legacy was not written in classified files. It was written in the improved capabilities of warriors who would carry her lessons forward into battles she would never see. And that, Riley thought as she prepared for another early morning at the range, was exactly how it should be. The woman at Lane 7 was no longer alone. She was surrounded by students, supported by a community, and driven by purpose that honored both her past and shaped the future. She had stopped changing targets and started changing lives. And she was just getting started.